Alright guys, so we have some major breaking news from last night as we continue down this doom spiral towards a potential broader war in the Middle East that it seems like Israel is hell-bent on starting. So just to recap for everybody how we got to this point, here is pointed out by Iman Abdelhadi, Israel attacked Iran's consulate, okay, killing 16, including high-ranking IRGC, Iranian commanders and officials. Iran then retaliated with a symbolic show of force that ended up killing nobody, where they sent a bunch of drones and missiles towards Israel, knowing that they were going to be largely intercepted. And then Iran got sanctioned by the United States, other European countries, and Israel, who has started all of this, is demanding an invasion of Rafah in exchange for not continuing to escalate towards World War III. So this was reporting that we had from the Jerusalem Post from yesterday. U.S. approves Rafah operation in exchange for no Israeli counterstrikes on Iran. Okay, so it looks like the U.S., which we've known this for a long time, is greenlighting their Rafah operation, which is going to be an absolute humanitarian catastrophe, to say the least. And I guess sort of like the deal, according to this reporting, was, okay, but don't strike Iran. Now, what did Israel go and do? Well, here from the BBC, what we know about Israel's overnight attack on Iran. They say there are competing claims about the scale of the attack on the Isfahan region and the extent of any damage, with Iranian state media downplaying its significance. So here's the thing, guys. A lot of these details are still up in the air, and you have sort of like competing narratives that are going on here, and I think almost for good reason. Right? So if Iran was legitimately attacked in this Isfahan region and they suffered significant damage, but they're coming out and trying to say, no, it really wasn't that big of a deal, there was no real damage, we shot everything down, regardless of what the truth is of what kind of damage took place last night, the fact that they are downplaying it is actually a good sign. It means that Iran does not want to potentially escalate this even further, right? Even though arguably they have a justification to do so. Because again, the origin point of this was Israel bombed Iran's embassy, killed a bunch of their top officials, and then Iran did a show of force response to that, and then Israel escalated from there. So it's definitely as tense of a situation as you could possibly get, and it's terrifying, but this is like a slight early indication here. If the Iranian state media is saying we shot everything down, it's not that big of a deal, there's no real damage, hopefully there's a potential for an off-ramp that still exists, okay? Now, they continue here. They say U.S. officials have confirmed to the BBC's partner CBS News that an Israeli missile hit Iran in the early hours of Friday. Now, this back and forth between Iran launching missiles and drones at Israel directly from Iranian soil and vice versa, of Israel launching missiles towards Iranian soil directly from Israel, this is like unprecedented. This hasn't really happened. I mean, obviously there are a lot of sort of like proxy forces in the region that go tit for tat back and forth all the time, but this in and of itself is already just a massive, unprecedented escalation towards a potential direct conflict with Israel and Iran. They say it is unclear what type of weapons were used or where they were launched from. U.S. officials said that a missile was involved in the attack, while Iran said that it involved small drones. They say some Iranian officials and media have confirmed that there was an attempted strike, but are downplaying the significance of it. There have been no reports of casualties. And then we got Iran's Fars news agency said that explosions were heard near an army base and air defense systems were activated. A state media channel quoted a general in Isfahan saying explosions heard in the area were due to air defense firing at a suspicious object, and saying that there had been no damage. Iran's semi-official Tasnim news agency, which is close to Iran's powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps military wing, posted a video of a nuclear facility in Isfahan, which did not show any signs that it had been hit. So I guess, at least for right now, looks like Israel didn't directly bomb a nuclear site, which is, for this situation that we're talking about, somewhat of good news, or less bad news and alarming than it possibly could be. They also say that the International Atomic Energy confirmed that there was no damage at any of these nuclear sites. Explosions were also reported in Iraq and Syria, where armed groups backed by Iran operate overnight, but it is unclear if they were directly linked to the Isfahan strike. So it looks like, based on this reporting, Israel bombed 3, possibly 4 countries last night, possibly Lebanon, but Syria, Iraq, and Iran, okay? Again, desperately trying to get us into a war in the region or directly with Iran. This is something that Benjamin Netanyahu has wanted for a very long time, guys. And Biden has been, although they come out and they say, well, we don't want an escalation with Iran, we don't want war with Iran. If you're handing the keys over to Benjamin Netanyahu and saying, well, Israel can respond however they want while we continue to give them weapons, continue to give them diplomatic cover, then it's not really even up to you, right? You're not using any leverage to force Israel not to escalate to a broader war in the region. So you're just handing the keys over to Netanyahu, which is like the most dangerous thing you could possibly do. They say the region that was struck is home to significant Iranian military infrastructure, including a large airbase, a missile production complex, and several nuclear facilities. Israel would usually tell the U.S. in advance about a military action, but Italy's foreign minister, Antonio Tajani, told reporters at the G7 mission that that Washington was informed at the very last minute. This is a great ally that we have here, guys. Just constantly escalating, constantly trying to get us into wars, not even telling us really what's going on until the last minute. I mean, Jesus Christ. Speaking at the summit, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken refused to be drawn on the attack, saying only that the U.S. had not been involved in any offensive operations. So, I mean, listen, guys, again, you can't really say that you weren't involved in an offensive military action if you are giving Israel weapons that they are potentially using in some of these strikes, if you're giving them diplomatic cover to continue doing exactly what they've been doing, escalating with Iran, bombing an Iranian embassy, going tit for tat with Hezbollah, continuing their genocide in Gaza. You can't say that you don't agree with an offensive military operation or you're not a part of it when you're completely attached at the hip to everything that Israel does and you have no red lines for them whatsoever. So, I mean, it's so ridiculous. At this point, I mean, listen, as pointed out here by Asal Rod, she says the U.S. didn't endorse Israel's attack on Iran. They just knew it was going to happen. They didn't stop it. They provided the weapons and money to make it possible and refused to give Israel any red lines, so they're emboldened to do whatever they want. But apparently that's not an endorsement. I mean, again, it's absurd. Now, a couple other things that have happened over the last couple of days here. U.S. and allies penalize Iran for striking Israel and try to avert war. Okay, so, I mean, the headlines here are just amazing from the New York Times constantly. But U.S. and allies penalize Iran for striking Israel and try to avert war. So where exactly is the trying to avert war part of this come into play? Because if you were trying to avert war, then you would have condemned Israel's strike on the Iranian embassy. Okay, that was the origin of this back and forth. You didn't condemn that. Okay, so then to turn around and condemn, which we also had a vote on in Congress, by the way, to turn around and condemn the Iranian response to Israel's aggression, to Israel's escalation, it just kind of blows up the obvious hypocrisy in everybody's face. If you are our ally, Israel, you can escalate, you can be the aggressor, you can do whatever you want, you can violate international law over and over and over again, and we will say nothing about it, and we'll continue to give you weapons, we'll continue to give you diplomatic cover. But if you're one of our geopolitical enemies, like Iran, then we are going to try to use every lever that we have, whether it's sanctions, whether it's providing, military support to Israel to use against you, everything. We will take votes in Congress condemning your actions. I mean, it's so hypocritical at face value. Now, again, trying to avert war doesn't seem like it. They also say, while imposing sanctions on Iran, U.S. and European governments are urging restraint. Again, are you urging restraint just towards Iran to not respond? I mean, how do you think the United States or any of these European countries would have responded if some foreign adversary had bombed one of our embassies and killed some of our top military officials? What do you think the United States would do? We would have invaded that country, okay? So let's not bullshit people and pretend as if, well, we need to urge Iran to use restraint, which, by the way, they've been doing, okay? The fact that even now, after Israel just bombed, one of their military facilities or whatever inside Iran, the fact that they're now coming out and saying, well, the missile didn't actually hit, or it's really not that big of a deal, there's no casualties, there's no damage, this is just another indication that Iran doesn't want an escalation to a war with the United States or Israel. They want de-escalation, okay? The Iranian government, which I'm not a fan of, by the way, but they have consistently been acting with more restraint, okay, They have consistently been the more rational actor when compared with both the United States and Israel, because it was also the United States under the Trump administration that assassinated Qasem Soleimani, who was busy on the ground fighting ISIS at the time. And Trump just assassinated him. Why? Because he fucking could. And Iran, responded to that, but didn't escalate from there. We could have had a potential war with Iran back then. And then Israel does this same kind of shit again. And then Iran shows restraint. And then Israel responds again, trying to escalate. And then now, as of right now at least, it appears like maybe there's still an off-ramp here, somehow. But that's not because of Israel. It's not because of the United States. Okay? One final thing. Just, again, immaculate headlines here from the New York Times. Miscalculation led to escalation and clash between Israel and Iran. Israeli officials say they didn't see a strike on a high-level Iranian target in Syria, the embassy, as a provocation, and didn't give Washington a heads up. I'm sorry. What? What the fuck does that mean? They didn't see bombing Iran's embassy, killing top commanders as an escalation. They didn't see that as a provocation. What exactly did they see it as? An act of peace? A dove? Is that what they saw it as? Like they were sending a dove. It wasn't a missile. It wasn't a drone attack. It was a dove, according to Israel, apparently. So, I mean, listen, guys. A lot of the details of this still not out yet. We'll have to keep talking about it over the next couple of days and seeing how Iran responds to this. But it is just utterly embarrassing for Joe Biden and terrifying for the American people, for the people, in Iran, for the people in Gaza and everywhere else in the region, that Joe Biden, okay, who's supposed to be like the big brother in this relationship with Israel and the United States, you're supposed to be the one who has your hand on the wheel, okay? He has more leverage than any other single person on the face of the planet to direct what Israel is doing. And instead, he's handed the keys over to Benjamin Netanyahu to do whatever he wants in Gaza, with only mild finger wagging at him behind the scenes. Oh, all these reports, how mad Biden is at Benjamin Netanyahu, but here's another couple $1 billion in weapons to continue doing exactly what you're doing. We have just handed the possibility of a broader war in the region, a drastic escalation towards war with Iran, over to Israel. Israel is getting to decide U.S. foreign policy right now, and it's absolutely terrifying. So again, we'll have to see how Iran potentially responds or doesn't respond to this. But we have really, at least in my living memory, have not been this close to a potential direct war between Israel and Iran involving, obviously, the United States as well.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying